His own brothers sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver when he was just 17 years old. 20 years later, he had the power to destroy their lives, watch them starve, or throw them in prison forever. Instead, he chose forgiveness and saved the very people who ruined his life. This is the most heartbreaking story of betrayal and redemption ever recorded. Before we dive in, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Drop betrayed in the comments if you've experienced the crushing pain of family turning against you. Because what happened to young Joshua will redefine everything you think you know about forgiveness and family loyalty. Picture this. A 17-year-old boy, his father's favorite, sharing dreams of a bright future with his jealous older brothers. They hate him for being loved, hate him for his dreams, hate him for his hope. One day, they get their chance for revenge. What they do next destroys one life, but ultimately saves millions. But here's the question that will haunt you. If the people who destroyed your life came begging for help years later, would you save them or let them suffer? Keep watching, because Joshua's choice between vengeance and mercy changed the course of history and proves that some people have hearts bigger than their pain. The hill country of Canaan, around 1700 BC. Jacob's family was blessed with wealth, vast flocks of sheep and goats, servants, and land. But Jacob made a devastating mistake that poisoned his household. He had a clear favorite among his 12 sons. Joshua was the second youngest, born to Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, who had died in childbirth. Jacob showered Joshua with affection, gave him special privileges, and even crafted him a beautiful multicolored coat that marked him as heir apparent. His 10 older brothers watched this favoritism with growing resentment. While they worked long hours in the fields, Joshua was often excused from hard labor. While they wore simple work clothes, Joshua wore his ornate coat. While they were treated as hired hands, Joshua was treated like a prince. The jealousy festered for years. Joshua made the situation worse by sharing vivid dreams he'd been having, dreams where his brothers bowed down to him, where even his parents showed him reverence. "I dreamed we were binding grain in the field," Joshua told his brothers one morning, "and your bundles bowed down to my bundle." His brothers stared at him with barely concealed rage. "Do you think you can rule over us?" they snarled. When Joshua shared another dream about the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing to him, even their father rebuked him, but the damage was done. His brother's hatred had turned murderous. Pause. Have you ever been in a family situation where favoritism created division and resentment? How did it affect the relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. One day, Jacob sent Joshua to check on his brothers who were grazing the flocks in distant Dothan, a 3-day journey from home. Joshua set out alone, wearing a special coat, completely unaware of the danger. When his brothers saw him coming across the hills, still miles away, one of them said, "Here comes that dreamer. Now's our chance." "Let's kill him," suggested Simeon. "We'll throw his body in a pit and tell father a wild animal got him. Then we'll see what becomes of his precious dreams." Reuben, the eldest, had enough conscience left to stop the murder. "Don't kill him. Just throw him in the pit alive." He secretly planned to rescue Joshua later and return him to their father. When Joshua reached his brothers, they attacked him immediately. They stripped off his beloved coat, the symbol of his father's favoritism, and threw him into a deep, empty well. Joshua's screams echoed from the pit as his brothers sat down to eat lunch, ignoring his pleas for mercy. "Please, brothers, I'm sorry if I offended you. Father will pay any ransom you want." But they ate their meal in cold silence while their teenage brother begged for his life from the bottom of a stone pit. Then Judah spotted something that changed everything. A merchant caravan approaching from the distance. "Wait," Judah called his brothers. "What profit is there in killing our brother? Look, there's a caravan of traders heading to Egypt. Let's sell him as a slave instead." The other brothers agreed immediately. When the Ishmaelite merchants arrived, they negotiated quickly. 20 pieces of silver for a healthy teenage boy. Joshua was dragged screaming from the pit. "Brothers, please, don't do this. I'll never mention the dreams again. I'll be your servant forever." But the transaction was completed. 20 pieces of silver changed hands, and Joshua was bound and loaded onto a camel, watching his homeland disappear forever as the caravan headed toward Egypt. His brothers took his coat, tore it, and soaked it in goat's blood. When they returned home, the brothers presented the bloody coat to their father. "We found this. Do you recognize it?" Jacob collapsed when he saw his son's torn, bloody coat. "It's Joshua's. A wild animal has devoured him. My son is dead." Jacob mourned for months, refusing all comfort. His favorite son was gone, and he believed he'd been torn apart by wild beasts. Meanwhile, the brothers watched their father's grief and felt nothing. They had gotten their revenge. In Egypt, Joshua was sold to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. From a beloved son to a foreign slave, the fall was devastating. But Joshua had a choice: become bitter and broken, or find purpose in his pain. Despite everything, he chose to work diligently, to maintain his integrity, even to trust in God's plan. His character impressed Potiphar so much that he promoted Joshua to manage his entire household. For a brief moment, life seemed promising again. Then false accusations from Potiphar's wife landed Joshua in prison for years. More injustice, more pain, more reasons to give up hope. But in prison, Joshua interpreted dreams for fellow inmates, a skill that eventually reached Pharaoh's attention. Pharaoh had troubling dreams that none of his advisors could interpret. The cupbearer remembered Joshua and recommended him. Joshua interpreted Pharaoh's dreams correctly. 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of devastating famine. He proposed a plan to store grain during the good years to survive the bad ones. Pharaoh was so impressed that he appointed Joshua as second in command over all of Egypt. At age 30, the former slave became the most powerful man in the empire after Pharaoh himself. Pause. Have you ever experienced a situation where your greatest pain eventually led to your greatest purpose? Sometimes our worst betrayals position us for our biggest breakthroughs. Share your story below. 7 years later, the predicted famine struck with devastating force. Crops failed across the entire region. People faced starvation from Canaan to Egypt. But Egypt was prepared. Under Joshua's management, they had stored enough grain to feed not only their own people, but to sell surplus to desperate neighboring countries. Back in Canaan, Jacob's family was starving. The old man who had lost his favorite son now faced losing his remaining family to hunger. "I've heard there's grain for sale in Egypt," Jacob told his remaining sons. "Go there and buy food for us, or we'll all die." 10 brothers set out for Egypt, all except Benjamin, the youngest, whom Jacob kept home for fear of losing another son. The 10 brothers arrived in Egypt and were brought before the governor in charge of grain distribution, not knowing they were about to face the brother they had sold into slavery 20 years earlier. Joshua recognized them instantly. They were older, weather beaten by years of hard labor, but unmistakably his brothers. They, however, didn't recognize the powerful Egyptian official as their teenage brother. They bowed low before him, just as Joshua had dreamed decades earlier. For a moment, Joshua struggled with overwhelming emotions. Here were the men who had destroyed his life, now prostrated before him, completely at his mercy. He could have them arrested. He could let them starve. He could reveal his identity and watch them die of shock and shame. Instead, he tested them. Joshua accused them of being spies and threw them in prison for 3 days. Then he released them but kept Simeon as hostage, demanding they bring their youngest brother Benjamin to prove their honesty. When they returned with Benjamin, Joshua put them through more tests. Watch and see if 20 years had changed their hearts. Would they abandon Benjamin the way they had abandoned him? Would they sacrifice their father's new favorite to save themselves? During these encounters, the brothers spoke freely in Hebrew, not knowing Joshua understood every word. He listened as they discussed their guilt. "We're being punished for what we did to Joshua. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we wouldn't listen." Joshua had to leave the room to weep. Finally, Joshua couldn't bear it anymore. He sent all his Egyptian attendants away and revealed himself to his brothers. "I am Joshua, your brother, the one you sold into Egypt." The brothers were speechless with terror. The man they had betrayed now held their lives in his hands. But Joshua's next words changed everything. "Don't be afraid. Don't be angry with yourselves for selling me. God sent me here ahead of you to save lives. The famine will last 5 more years. Go back and bring our father and all our families here. I'll provide for you. Think about what Joshua was offering. Complete forgiveness to the people who had ruined his life. Not just forgiveness, but provision, protection, and restoration. He could have said, "You made your bed, now lie in it. You wanted me gone? Fine. Starve." Instead, he saved them. All of them. He moved his entire extended family, 70 people, to Egypt, gave them the best land in the country, and supported them through the remaining years of famine. When their father Jacob died years later, the brothers were terrified that Joshua had only forgiven them for their father's sake. They sent a message claiming Jacob had asked Joshua to forgive them. Joshua wept when he heard this. "Don't be afraid," he told them. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to save many lives, as he is doing today." Joshua's forgiveness didn't just save his family. It saved the future of an entire nation. The descendants of those 11 brothers would become the 12 tribes of Israel. If Joshua had chosen vengeance over mercy, if he had let his family starve, there would be no Israel, no Jewish people, no foundation for Christianity or Islam. One man's choice to forgive his betrayers changed the course of world history. We live in a world that celebrates revenge. Get them before they get you. Don't get mad, get even. They deserve what's coming to them. But Joshua's story suggests a different path. The power of choosing forgiveness over vengeance, especially when you have every right to seek revenge. This doesn't mean being a doormat or ignoring justice. Joshua tested his brother's character and held them accountable. But when he saw genuine remorse and change, he chose restoration over retaliation. You may be carrying the pain of betrayal right now. Someone who should have protected you sold you out. Family members who should have supported you threw you under the bus. People you trusted completely destroyed your dreams. Joshua's story doesn't minimize that pain. Betrayal by family cuts the deepest. But it shows that sometimes our greatest pain becomes our greatest platform for purpose. The brothers who sold Joshua into slavery ultimately needed him to survive. Sometimes the people who hurt us most become the very ones we're positioned to help. Final challenge. Who in your life needs the kind of forgiveness that Joshua showed? What would happen if you chose mercy over vengeance? Share this video with someone who's struggling to forgive family betrayal. Sometimes the hardest forgiveness opens the door to the greatest redemption. That's the story of a man who was sold for 20 pieces of silver and bought back his family's future with forgiveness. The boy who was thrown in a pit became the man who pulled his entire family out of starvation. If this story touched your heart and made you think about forgiveness differently, drop forgive in the comments and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove love is stronger than betrayal.